Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for the career panel from Medtronic. We're going to kind of let everybody get in from the waiting room and just give it a minute for everybody to get plugged in, and we'll get started here in just a moment. Great, looks like everybody's in. So I'll go ahead and just introduce myself really quick. My name is Susan, and I am a project manager for SHPE with the Research and Innovation team, and I work directly with the internship program with Medtronic. SHPE and Medtronic have partnered together to provide opportunities for full-time paid internships for this summer 2023. And really the way this looks a little bit different is there is a very holistic support system provided by both Medtronic and SHPE together. So you will be at Medtronic as an intern interacting with interns from all over the country, but there will be a SHPE cohort where we do some things like mentoring, and we do some project management courses and some panels just introducing you to different people within the HLN, the Hispanic Latino Network there at Medtronic. Just really creating a familiar support that is familiar to us at SHPE and just kind of continuing that on at Medtronic. This is our second year to do this, and so we're really excited about accepting cohort number 2 into this internship partnership with Medtronic. I want to share just a couple of housekeeping things that's going to happen today with the panel. We are recording this, so I just want to make you aware. At the point in time when we have the Q&A, you can feel free to unmute yourself and show your camera if you like, but just do know that it's being recorded and will be shared. So whichever you're more comfortable with, you can ask your questions in person, or you can also type your questions in the chat, and we'll make sure that they get answered from the chat, and we'll be monitoring that as well. So at any point during the conversation today, feel free to ask your questions. We're going to start with an introduction of both of our panelists, and then we just really want this to be a casual conversation where you can get your questions answered about the work that they're doing in Medtronic in IT, MIS, and InfoSystems. So I'm going to get us started. And I'm going to just quickly introduce, we have 2 panelists from Medtronic. We have Stephanie and Susie, both working in different areas and different things. They're going to introduce themselves and tell you more about their journey and their story. So Stephanie, I'm going to start with you. If you would like to just share your story about your journey and what you're working on now at Medtronic.
Sure, yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Ortiz Valle. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, and I moved to Minnesota about 5 years ago. I've been working with Medtronic for 3 years now. I started as a contractor and then got hired as a full-time employee. My role in Medtronic is medical device reporting vigilance specialist, and I'll tell you more about it as we go on in this meeting. And I've actually been working from home since March 2020, but if I had an office, it would be in Mounds View, Minnesota. But like I said, I haven't been there since 2020. A little bit more about me is that I have a bachelor's degree in chemistry. I went to the University of Puerto Rico, which is a university that's very focused on engineering. And I've been actually a part of SHPE since high school. I was part of SHPE Junior, and then I was part of SHPE as an undergraduate. And SHPE has been just a great place for me to grow as a professional. And now I'm recently part of the HLN SHPE ERG, which is a research group in Medtronic. And I'm in the leadership board. I am the recruitment co-chair, which my role is basically to just recruit and retain Hispanic and Latino talent in Medtronic. And then outside work, I like going to the beach when I'm in Puerto Rico. I like coffee, so I like exploring coffee shops, and I consider myself kind of like a foodie, so just exploring all of the new restaurants in the neighborhood. And I guess the picture that you see of me here is with my husband. I just got married like 4 months ago. And that's our little puppy, Rio. He just turned 1 year old. So yeah, that's my little family here. So that's all about me.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing that, Stephanie.
Yeah.
I love coffee as well. So we could be cohorts in our coffee addiction. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Then next we have Susie.
Yeah, hello, my name is Susie Sorrel. I'm a senior IT program manager here at Medtronic. I've been here for about 9 years, and same story as Stephanie. I started as a contractor on a 4-month contract just to get my foot in the door, and have been here ever since. I was originally raised in Massachusetts. I went to school in Washington, D.C., where I received my master's in cell and developmental biology from the American University. For 15 years of my career, I started out as a senior scientist. Actually, I started out in forensics and made my way as a senior scientist for the University of Minnesota. I am a copyright patent owner, a copyright owner for an application that I built myself, where we are typing the human papillomavirus from cervical smears. And that is today still being used by Fairview University here in Minnesota. And I once was the director of the islet core, which is islets as in pancreatic islets. So I worked in the diabetes division at the University of Minnesota. And in that, I got to do some really cool things. But part of that came along with a grant from Best Buy to basically solve the issue with islets and diabetes. So with $40 million came a new role of a project manager, which I had no clue what a project manager did. I mean, it wasn't a formal title that I had used, and frankly, it wasn't even as cool as a senior scientist role, but I went into it and embraced it, and I'm glad I did. It set me on a different career path. I have 5 strengths for those of you who have ever done your strengths. I'm an activator, achiever, learner, maximizer, and analytical. So I can analyze data to death. I love to garden and landscape. I'm outside all the time. I have 3 children, 2 older boys, and my daughter is a 17-year-old who is getting into the sciences just like all of you. So I'm watching her career journey right now, and I'm trying to encourage her to get into Medtronic as an intern also for all the experience she will get. And then probably about 5 years ago, I call it midlife crisis. I decided I wanted to do something when I turned 50, and I took up motorcycle riding. And I can't say I fit the profile, but at the same time, I love just going to get my nails done or going to pick up coffee or something. And I usually take my motorcycle for that. So yeah, my favorite quote is worry looks around, regret looks back, and faith looks forward. And I'm very happy to be here. One thing else I should mention is that I wear this badge very proudly. I am the co-chair for the HLN Twin Cities Network. So that is probably the most prestigious title I could receive out of anything I've had over the years, and I'm very proud of that.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you both so much for sharing. I'm excited to kind of explore both your journeys a little bit more and let these students ask you some questions as well. So thank you both for sharing. I'm going to stop the screen share so we can just kind of focus on each other a little bit more for a little bit, and we'll kind of dive into some questions. Students, you don't know me yet, but I've got a lot of questions prepared. But like I said, we will skip all of my questions because your questions are more important. So if you have questions at any point during this time, if you want to type them in the chat, we will make sure they get answered if you want to raise your hand and ask a question. But I'm going to kind of kick us off a little bit with your, just tell us a little bit more about what does a day in your life look like? And I realize that's kind of a loaded question sometimes, right? Because there's never a normal day. But if you just picked a random day last week, like last Wednesday or whatever day, tell us what does your day typically look like? And tell us about, break it down into how much time do you spend in meetings versus working on projects or meeting with people individually? What does that day look like for you in your current role right now? And we'll start off with Susie here on this one.
Yeah, so as a senior IT program manager, my programs usually range everything from new ERG, so SAP systems, bringing on enhancements to the projects. I also have another program that I'm leading, which is in a manufacturing facility, and it's bringing the manufacturing, what they call the pitch chart, to the floor so that we can keep track of how we're doing in our individual manufacturing sites. We call them cells, basically monitoring, are we hitting what we said we were going to do? Do we have problems with our instruments? Do we have waste? And really trying to lean in and identify where the issues could be. So that is another program. My typical day usually starts off about 7 a.m. with a meeting, and that is because it's global programs. So, you know, to accommodate the time frames across the world, we will have 7 a.m. meetings, not every day. So I'll have to admit 7 a.m.s are hard, and, you know, you have to get that coffee in, but it could start at 7 a.m. and then, you know, we have individuals who work East Coast, West Coast. So after that, we'll have a few meetings. It depends on the time of month it is. I could be working on my financial planning. I could be working on basically planning for my team and making sure that all of the, and I use something called Microsoft Planner right there. So making sure that I have all my tasks lined up, meeting with my team. And then sometimes I do intentionally put focus time on my calendar so that I am not in meetings all day long and I can really manage how I want to spend my time in that focus time. Sometimes I just need to decompress. So my focus time is basically having a cup of coffee and maybe doing something like stretching. But that helps me to focus on, you know, what I need to do for the next couple of hours, or maybe I schedule that at the end of the day just to tidy up, get my meeting minutes together, send those off, make sure my status reports are done, etc. So throw in a few meetings for the HLN network and throw in a few more meetings. I volunteer for a lot of stuff. I have a problem where I can't say no. So, so I do get a lot of extra things that I work on and make sure I have time for that too. But I can tell you that if you really manage your work, you manage your team, and you let your team self-direct, then you won't be working till 5, 6 o'clock at night when your day starts at 7. So it's all up to you how you want to manage that.
That's great advice. And I love the advice of the focus time piece. I learned that early on in my career. A great piece of advice. Stephanie, how about you? What does the day look like for you on a typical day?
Yeah, so funny you ask that, because now this week I'm really doing nothing like my day-to-day looks like usually. But not talking about this week, usually what my day looks like is that I do a lot of data analysis. So I start my day usually around 7, just because I like starting my day before the rest of the team starts working. Gives me time to just like focus on my work without having people like pull me aside for like questions and stuff. So I usually spend my time from like 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. just processing the data that I need to process for the day. So to talk a little bit more about that, what I do in my role is that we process all of the complaints that we receive from Medtronic. We analyze that data, we analyze the complaint, and we send that to our downstream users. So that could be the engineers in charge of like the specific product I work for, product development, it could be research and development, medical safety, and other people as well. And then I start with that. Then I have to do assessments of my data and see what do I have to send to the FDA. I work directly with the FDA and sending regulatory reports to the FDA. So I focus a lot when I'm doing those reg reports. And then I do a lot of work with manufacturing plants as well, manufacturing sites, as I do investigations with the manufacturing sites of how our product is doing in the market. Looking at the data that I have, I want to like make sure that there's no problem from the manufacturing sites regarding the data that we're seeing right now. So that's basically how my day looks like. Some things that I do also is that, and sometimes I follow up with the surgeons and the patients and the sales rep that are in the field with our product And that's to get further information about certain events that I see. So that's basically what like 70% of my time looks like. I also work in a lot of different projects. I work in different A3s, which is part of my yellow belt certification. So what I do those is that I've been identifying some gaps in our current work process and just like doing a project to find solutions for those gaps. Additionally, I'm currently training new hires. So even though I've been 3 years in my position, I would consider myself one of like the most senior ones in my position because my team is relatively new. Most of them have been like 6 months. So I spend a lot of time just being a mentor to them and just like answering questions and like guiding them on what to do. And meeting wise, that's my favorite part about my job. I don't really have to do a lot of meetings. We only do meetings Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays, and they can only be scheduled from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. So that's great. In my opinion, I love that. So I just do a lot of like time and work on my own.
That's great to hear. I know working with engineers for many years, I think the perception is that we work a lot alone. And what I'm hearing from both of you is there's a good mix, right? There's time to work on the things that you need to work on to produce the things that you need to produce. But there's also a lot of time for team interaction, mentoring, collaboration. Awesome. Yeah. Well, one of the participants actually has a question. How many hours a week do you typically work? Which one of you would like to take that first?
I can start. I usually work my 40 hours a week, most weeks. I would say right now, because I'm training new people, it does take me, I do have longer days because I have to train the new people and I want to have like all my focus towards them. So I don't try to like do my actual work while I'm training. So I do take like 1 or 2 hours extra a day to just focus on the little extra work that I need to do. So this week, I would say I'm doing like 9 hours a day or 10 hours a day, but usually I'm pretty like strict with my 8 hours a day and I log off.
Great.
Yeah,
Is it any different for you, Susie?
Yeah, the same for me. I mean, we're trying to have a culture here at Medtronic where we're respectful of understanding that people have family life balance. And so for me, if I send an email at night just because I happen to see it, there's no expectation that you should answer that email. And I say that in my emails. So I typically will work an 8-hour day. Some days, if I have extra work, I'm fine with working 9 or 10 hours, but usually it balances out. We have something also at Medtronic where, especially in IT, where we called Focus Fridays. And so on Fridays, it is well known that we do not schedule meetings after 12 o'clock. And in fact, we encourage employees from between, let's see, Memorial Day to Labor Day. So basically those summer hours to log out, to do half days on Fridays and don't schedule meetings. And in fact, it's okay if somebody schedules it to say it's Focus Friday and remind them. Now, at the same time, work cannot drop, right? If it's absolutely imperative that you do it, then people will understand that. But usually most people respect that. So just coming off of the September date, coming back to, no more Focus Fridays, but it's kind of nice. It takes people usually a couple of weeks, almost to a month before they realize that Friday afternoon is now available. So yeah, 40 hours now, but at the same time, if I have a slow week, I manage my own time. If I have a slow week and I do 30 that week, I know there could be another week where I'm going to have a go live and I'm expected to work with my team throughout the weekend. That could be a 50-hour week, but as long as I'm planning my own time, I know when to expect it. It's within my control.
That was a great question, Alexis. There's a follow-up question to that too. Have either of you worked with any of the Medtronic interns? What do you notice about their schedules?
I haven't actually worked directly with a Medtronic intern, but I did get to meet our last round of Medtronic interns, and their schedule was 40 hours a week. I do know that in those 40 hours a week, they do get to do a lot of like activities. So they get like professional development sessions and other career development sessions that are usually included in that 40 hours a week. I think overall, the interns in Medtronic have kind of like the same schedule as us, where for me, for example, I really am the owner of my schedule. So I can, as long as I put my 40 hours a day, I can basically work those 40 hours whenever I want during the day.
Yeah, and I have not worked with any interns here at Medtronic. Now, in the past, when I've had interns, I've always been flexible in knowing, and if this is a summertime, and sometimes interns will take summer classes, we work around that. And my expectation is, you're professionals. So as long as you communicate your time and you communicate when you have certain things going on, I think there could be a lot of flexibility there. So to say you have to be here from 9 to 5 when you want to pursue your education and other things, there is some flexibility in there. Now, I don't know technically if there's an expectation, like you have to work so many days, so many hours in a day, but I'm assuming that the expectation is you're coming in here as a professional, and so we would treat you as a professional.
I've been able to do exit interviews in the last few weeks with our 2022 summer interns, and that's exactly what I heard from them. Alexis, I also heard from them, like the types of things that they were doing during the day is very reflective of what Susie and Stephanie are experiencing. They were all given a project of something to work on and kind of claim as their own. And so they had work time, focus time directly for that project. But then they also had the professional development pieces, the panels with the HLN, and encouraged to go and make one-on-one appointments with different people that they wanted to meet with, just to network, to learn about what different people did in the company. And so it was a mixture of working on your own project, producing something, but also the networking, collaborating, professional development pieces as well. Those are great questions, Alexis. Thanks for asking those. Feel free to ask more, any of you who are participating. I want to shift a little bit for both of you and just kind of ask you, how did you choose your career? And I realize that can be a loaded question, right? People ask me that sometimes, and I'm like, well, it kind of looks like this windy journey that I didn't know, but kind of walk us through how did that work for you? How did you go about choosing your career? And let's start with Stephanie.
Yes, that is a very confusing question. I did my bachelor's in chemistry, and I always knew that I wanted to be in the medical field. But if you look at my resume, all of my experience, or most of my experience, is based on research. I did a lot of research when I was an undergrad, and I worked in a lot of lab work in general with different universities and also with like other companies. So as an undergrad, I always thought that I was going to end up in research and development or something in that area. Funny enough, when I did graduate, I went to work at the U of M as a research assistant, and I was doing my research in Alzheimer's disease. It was super interesting. However, it was then when I realized, like, I've been like 10 years already in a lab, and I'm ready to like step out of the lab because that's all I knew about since like high school. And while that was happening, at the same time, I was involved in a lot of like extracurricular activities like SHPE, and a lot of like things that would require more of like leadership skills, just like talking in front of people, etc. And I was like, I want to like take my skills of just who I am as a person and apply it to my professional career, and not just be alone in the lab anymore. So that's when I started to look for jobs, and I found Medtronic. And obviously I've heard great things about Medtronic. And like I mentioned, I always wanted to be in the medical field. So medical devices for me was something that was like very interesting. And where I am right now, I get to do a little bit of everything, which is what I love about my job. I really get to just like perform little skills here and there that really adds up to the end. So I think I've only been here 3 years. I like it. I don't envision myself being somewhere else that it's not Medtronic. And I'm very excited to see where the future takes me. And like, you know, in the future, someone like Susie has been 15 years here already. So I can't wait for me to just like get to that point as well.
What an awesome journey. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was 9 years, but it's sometimes it can feel like 15, but I'm happy either way. Yeah, so when I think back to, I've been asked this question before, and I've actually was asked this question in a job interview when I was here at Medtronic, when I was interviewing going from a contractor to an employee, basically, how did I make that leap? And so, like I said, I started my in college as a biology major, and I was headed to pre-med. I wanted to be a physician, mostly. I wanted to be a gynecologist delivering babies. I mean, that is like something that just seems so amazing to me. Because of like economics and being almost afraid of having all of that, if you will, that you know, college debt afterwards, I kind of talked myself out of it, and I started to work on just a bachelor's degree in biology. But as I was going through that, I was in the lab a lot, spent a lot of time in the lab. I said, okay, I decided, well, you know what, I'm going to go for my master's. And even if I decided at a later time to go back to medical school, at least I'll have my master's to fall back on while I'm working on my degree. And so I did go to the American University, and I was working on my cell and developmental biology degree. Long title, right? Sounds interesting. During that time, I really wanted like experience, sort of what you guys are asking for here, internship. And I didn't have SHPE back then. And so I had to basically reach out and try to find my own experience. And one of the relationships that my professor had at the time was with the Armed Forces DNA Identification Lab. And the acronym is AFDIL, and it's located in Rockville, Maryland. And so what they were doing was they were typing, basically collecting the swabs, the buccal swabs and blood from every person who entered the armed forces and putting it into a repository. So I got to start working there as an internship, and I was free and I didn't care. I wanted the experience. And that 4-month experience during my classes turned into a paid internship for the summer. And that led to a full-time employee job with the Armed Forces DNA Identification Lab. And just to give you some context, it was right around the time when O.J. Simpson trial was going on, and DNA was the latest and greatest thing. So you can't ask for a more exciting time to work in that field. But what we were doing in that lab was a lot of research. And that relationship that I had from just becoming a summer intern, I met a lady who had the government contract, and she was here in Minnesota. And she asked me to come work for her company. And so that led me to move out here to Minnesota. At the same time, she knew I loved being in the lab. And so she got me a position at the University of Minnesota. So it was the networking and connecting the dots. And so then I was at the University of Minnesota for about 9 years working in lab medicine and pathology. And I got laid off because it's grants. It was early in the maybe later in the 2000s. And we were all operating off of grants, and the funding out there for science was starting to dry up. But I did go back to the university. And another story, I left the university as a senior scientist. And when I was desperate to go back to work, because I really wanted to get in there, I applied for positions that were junior scientists, and I did not care. And I interviewed with the medical director, and he said, "But you are a senior scientist. Why do you want to go to a junior scientist?" And I said, "Because I just want to go back to work. I love this area. I'll work my way back up." And later that day, they called me and they said, "We are going to change your position to a senior scientist from what we were interviewing for. And we're also going to give you the same pay that you were making when you left the university before." So, so don't be afraid to take those leaps, and to, sometimes it may seem like you're going backwards, but you know, it can catapult you forward. And from then, became the co-director of the ILET Corps, like I said, doing research and clinical trials, et cetera. But with Best Buy coming in and offering that, they said, we want a CEO, a CIO, and a project manager. And so everybody looked at me and said, okay, you can do this. You're already doing this. And so they sent me to get the classes for project management. And I tried to get into Medtronic, honestly, as a scientist. I wanted nothing better than to be here as a scientist, but I ended up coming here. I did that project management work. I went to Be the Match. Be the Match hired me as their project manager. It was a huge IT project. And they liked me because I knew one term. It was HLN, and that was HLE or something. And it was a term that they used all the time. They saw my science. So they liked me to come in from the science background. I did nothing in science, nothing. It was strictly IT. It was a year kind of crash course in learning IT. And then from there, I ended up coming to Medtronic. So yeah, a lot of windy roads there. And if I look back at it now, I would have never thought that just going forward with that master's would have taken me on a totally different path. So.
What great stories. And I think that is so common to what I've heard from engineers and scientists throughout my career, and others as well, it's not exclusive to STEM fields, but we rarely end up where we thought we were going, right? The journey takes us lots of different places. And I love both of your comments about that this isn't what you started out, kind of thinking about necessarily, but just different experiences that led you to where you are now. So thanks for sharing those journeys. Let's talk a little bit more about Medtronic specifically. What is the culture at Medtronic like for you all in terms of expectations, standards, the work you're doing? What's the culture like for you at Medtronic?
I can go first. So before I started working for Medtronic, I did work for a short time in a small company, and giving background to have something to compare it. I worked for a small company, and I felt a lot of pressure in that small company. And what people had told me was kind of like the opposite, that you felt more pressure and in bigger company and less pressure in smaller companies. And that was not my experience. So that's why when I was like applying for Medtronic, I was like, I want a big company. Like I want to like be in a place where first there's diversity and there's people out there that are more like me. I can relate to more people. And second, I want to be able to just like work in the big company, because what I've been told about small companies was not what I expected. So I wanted to give it a shot. And I can say that I really live in a good work-life balance, like compared to my friends that work for other companies. They always tell me like, like it's so great how you can just have such a great balance in your life. And it's not really speaking to me as a person, it's speaking to the company. Like I definitely say that Medtronic and just like values the employees so much. And the culture in Medtronic is something very, very beautiful. I've been able to like just find a sense of community here. And it makes work so much easier, so much like I get along with all of my coworkers. It's very easygoing. I work in the quality department. So of course, like with quality comes a lot of like higher expectations, because we do need to perform with excellence at all times, and especially when I'm working directly with the FDA. And I would say at first that was something that I was kind of like afraid and a little bit challenging, because I thought there was going to be like a high pressure from me, but it hasn't been the case. Medtronic has so many systems in place to be able to just support you as an employee and like support your career growth. And if you do mess up with something, like Medtronic has things in place to just like back you up and just support every decision that you make along the way.
That's great. Susie, how about you? Have you experienced the same, different things?
Yeah, I think the best way to describe the Medtronic culture is to reemphasize our Medtronic mindset and the behaviors we have, right? So exactly what was just described is act boldly, right? We are encouraged to act boldly, even if we're on a fast fail. We'll have that support behind us, right? You can't do things always expecting to basically do something great if you don't take that chance. So the other ones are compete to win, right? Always have that mindset of competing, move with speed and decisiveness, right? Have faith in the decisions that you're making and try to expedite your decisions, right? And then, probably the most important one is foster belonging, be inclusive, understand that pairing up with individuals who are not like you, right, is the best thing you can do for your career and for your growth along the way. And then also, deliver results the right way. So take caution, make sure we're delivering the results so that it's beneficial for our patients, right? And there's always a patient at the end of the day. And I truly believe in what I've seen in the last 9 years is we definitely embody the Medtronic mindsets, and it has become a great culture and a place to work because of that. So, I mean, that's the best I can sum it up is kind of reiterating those Medtronic mindset.
Yeah, I think both of you are speaking to two things I've heard the interns talk a lot about too. The balance of, like Stephanie was talking about, that really life balance, respecting you as individuals. And where I first saw that come into play with Medtronic was really how you all introduce yourselves. Your template of your about me slide that balances both what am I doing in my job and what am I doing in my life, I think really speaks to that. And I hear a lot from students that I work with. They're looking for companies where they can go and they can be in a place where excellence is expected and supported, right? I want to perform well. I want to do good things. I want to help make the world a better place. But I also want to be valued as a human and have a life outside of work, and that's just as valuable too. So really good to hear. Students, if you all have any other questions, feel free to post those in the chat, and I'm going to keep moving along with questions if you don't have any. So feel free to interrupt me and interrupt my questions so you can get your questions answered. Let's talk a little bit about, like, what are some of the challenging aspects of your career? What are some of the things that are really challenging for you? And then balance that with the rewards as well.
I'll go first on this one. Some of the challenging aspects from being an IT program manager, they stem from the fact that, I did make that leap from science and in the lab to the IT portion. And I don't always get to see the finished product, right? I don't always get to see how it relates to the patient. And that is the part that I feel like I miss sometimes. Seeing when you're in the forefront of working on a defibrillator or working on new technology as a scientist there, an engineer, you often get to see how it's put into action, right? You get to see how it affects patients in their daily lives. Sometimes you don't see that being on the back end of the IT portion of it. So that is a challenge for me. But, I try to look for those areas, and I actually do it often. And I'm not sure if this is more than I should do it, but I often try to think of the patient at the end. So for example, when we're developing that pitch chart for the manufacturing floor, right? It's important that we don't have a backlog of product. It's important that we find these areas where we could potentially have waste, or we're delayed in not creating the right number of products we were hoping to get out the door, because guess what? There's a patient at the end of the day who needs that product, right? So I try to put what I'm doing on a daily basis and tie it back to a patient at the end of the day. And sometimes it's far-fetched, but it helps me to get through and just see that big picture.
That's great.
I would kind of agree with what Susie's saying. Being in the medical device reporting vigilance role, my biggest challenge is that I forget the big picture. My day-to-day can be very routine and it can get sometimes like not that exciting. So I always have to remind myself like, okay, like what you're doing right now is what the company needs in order to enhance the products that are already in the market in order for that next product of us be better than the one there is right now, and it can solve the issues that we're seeing right now with this product. So I do get to see the end picture because whenever we get the new device, I've been able to just see like, oh, this enhancements and this improvements were because of all of this data and all of this coding that we did when the other device was in the market. So that's the reward that I get. I can give an example of a reward that I had one day, and it's that a couple of years ago, we had a lot number that I was seeing the same complaint on the lot number with different products, and they all had the same lot number. So, you know, that was pretty early on when I first started in this role. And I escalated this to my supervisor, and I was like, hey, like this might not be anything, but I think it might be worth looking at it. And effectively, like they went down the manufacturing line and everything, and they found the problem was starting at the manufacturing. So, you know, just being able to catch that before another error was developed was like something that is a big win for the company, and something someone as me, which I'm an individual contributor, you know, it was a big reward for me to just like see that from the challenging that I pass on my day to day.
That's great. I've heard about there are some events where they bring some of the patients back in to kind of tell their stories. And I think I don't know how that plays out with everybody getting to participate in Medtronic, but I think just being able to hear those stories as an employee when you get bogged down in the day-to-day details, right? You're right, both keeping your eyes on the big picture.
Yep, that's our holiday special, and that started as a tradition with our walk-in back in the day. And we do love that holiday special, because that is where we get to hear the patient stories and understand and see how the salesperson has really helped save somebody's life by getting that call in 3 a.m. and making sure that they're the only ones local who happens to have that stock in their trunk and getting that to the hospital right away. I mean, so it's those type of stories where you never even connect the dots until you hear them at that holiday special. And we just love hearing it. It really does set us off with the new year in a right foot.
What a great tradition.
Mhm.
Well, let's jump to some advice for these undergrads that you have sitting here today and the ones who'll be listening to the recording. What piece of advice do you wish you would have received when you were getting your undergrad degree? Susie, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, you know, mine is probably a little bit different. It had nothing to do with my undergrad degree or my college. It had to do with me personally as a person. I am a proud Latina now. Okay, now I say, but when growing up and I'm, you know, a little bit older, I wore that badge when it was going to benefit me, you know, and I wish that somebody back then had said, be your authentic self, be who you are, show up at work. You can be the retro Hispanic that maybe you didn't grow up that way and you want to come back and learn more about your culture, or you can be the loud and proud. It's fine. You know, just be who you are, and don't try to change who you are to try to accommodate a room. You know, sometimes you do have to have self-awareness. I'm not talking about self-awareness. I'm talking about just be who you are, be your authentic self, and understand that you bring a lot to the table as to who you are as an individual.
Great advice. Stephanie, how about you?
Yes, I can give 2 advice. One, I wish someone would have told me this, but just worry less about your future and focus on your present right now. Without, you know, I know it's important to just think about your future, think about your career, not saying don't think about it, but like don't have it be like a pressing matter on you. Enjoy like being an undergrad, enjoy your present, like pay attention to what you're being taught in the classrooms, to who you are meeting during your undergrad years. Those things are just very important because you never know when you're going to need those things in the future. And paying attention to that has more value than just worrying enough like, oh, I'm going to be a senior, I need to like find a job ASAP. If you've done your work on a day-to-day basis and just focus on the present, when you're a senior, you're going to be able to like find the job that you want without too much difficulty. So don't worry about that too much. And secondly, know your value. Like that's something that me being in Medtronic, something that I've learned. Just know your value, who you are as a person, know what you bring to the table, know your strengths and work your strengths towards your favor, because no one is going to know you better than yourself. And you can't really expect someone to be like, oh, well, Alexis have those strengths, let me pick him. Like you have to like really know your value and speak to your values, work for your value. So people can like be like, okay, like this is the strength of this person, let's work towards that.
Great advice. Great advice for no matter where you're at in life, right?
Yeah.
I think that being present is a huge thing that all of us need to practice every day. And both of you talking about the concept of being your authentic self, I think is huge. That's actually one of the events that we did for the summer 2022 interns. And we did an event on what does it mean to be your authentic self? Like we say those words, but what does that actually mean? And how does that play out? I think it's a very good piece of advice. Well, I want to ask the participants one more time here, because I don't want to miss any of your questions. Do any of you have a question that you would like to ask either directly to them or type in the chat, because we are getting close to the end here and I want to make sure that we get all of your questions answered. So now's your chance. I've been a teacher a long time, so I'm like comfortable with uncomfortable silence. So I'm going to give it just another minute. Maybe somebody's working up the bravery to ask.
When I'm working with my team, I always say silence is golden. That means we got everything down. We know.
Okay. Well, with that, I'm going to thank everybody for participating. Susie and Stephanie, thank you so much for your time. I know you both have very busy schedules. And so thank you for sort of squeezing us in your day. And students, thank you so much for coming. I know that you all have busy days as well, too. So we really appreciate you coming. And I will be posting the recording of this and the slides so you can get that information. But I do just want to share a couple more reminders right before we get ready to go here. That if you're looking to apply for the internship program, you're going to go to ship.org/internship or read the many emails that you've probably gotten from me with all of the links to the application. When you go to the website, there's a couple of things I think you should really do. If you have not yet watched the general info session about this, that recording is on the website. That was with the Medtronic recruiting team, going through the nitty-gritty details of how to apply for an internship and what that looks like. You can also see the schedule for the other career panels. One thing that you kind of heard from them was that journeys don't always look the same for everybody. So while you may be sitting in a major that more closely aligns with IT or MIS or info systems, be sure to check out some of the other career panels as well too, because there's a lot of crossover in disciplines and there's different things that you can do. And you just want to make sure that you get your application done by 8 a.m. Central Standard Time, because that's the time zone I sit in. So 8 a.m. Central Standard Time on September 21st, we will go in and close that application and start the review process. And if you have any questions, just email us at internship@ship.org. That comes directly to me. That QR code will also take you to all the application materials. So we want to make sure you get all the information in as many ways as we can give it to you, and hope to see your application soon. Stephanie and Susie, thanks again so much. And I hope everybody has a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.